Hello and welcome to this episode of the X Podcast. How are my guys, my friends?
Braves win.
Braves.
He was just dying to say that.
Can we get a close-up of Atlanta Boys hat over here? I love it.
It's a beautiful gift from Hunter McGonigal. I was asked what the hearts and the golden halo mean. I don't know.
It means you love them.
But I love them. And this was sentimental for me. For those that know me, I'm not the biggest sports fan in the world. But I was trying to find pictures last night. I couldn't find them. I asked my dad if he had Polaroids. But one of my favorite memories, third grade, me and my dad were at the 1995 World Series game against the Cleveland Indians. And growing up,
Guardians.
The year I was born.
Soon to be Guardians.
Oh, that makes me feel really old.
You're
my first
engaged.
speeding ticket I ever got was on the way to a Braves game in college. It was really cool. And a weird series because, they're talking about they really had a bad record.
So you're saying that you've done the Battle Chop before?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you repented?
Yeah.
Not yet.
That is the
That
least.
is now
woke,
it's new.
That is the
At
least woke
politically
thing
correct.
you've ever done. But they still do it.
They do it.
They do.
Yeah.
Well,
Listen, I grew up a Canal-Chester Indian, so I'm all about it.
the Cleveland
you were cheering for-
Guardians. They're changing they took all the stuff off the signs as we speak.
Really?
Yeah, they're actually starting to remove all the Indian stuff.
Can you imagine how much it costs to rebrand
No.
a stadium that big?
cannot
They've got the
imagine.
big Indians
I
right
know.
there.
That's what they're taking off. They're in the process of taking all that stuff off. I can't imagine
That has got to be a
what
lot
it
of
costs
money.
to rebrand.
Wow.
Speaking of rebrand,
X-Church changing its
X-Church!
name again. Just kidding.
We're changing our
Just
name
kidding.
to Meta World Church.
Instagram is now better.
No.
Oh, my
Oh,
gosh.
man, we've really gone off the rails really quick.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
we're happy for you.
Thank you.
And your Braves win.
Yeah.
Ted
Good
Studebaker
you.
hitting the first home run
Yes.
of the game.
Ted Studebaker, Freddie
You to
Freeman,
know that joke.
and Joe
Hey,
Jones.
actually, something else that we could celebrate.
Joe-
I don't know why I said him.
The other thing
That's
we
bad.
could celebrate was the first college football playoff rankings came out.
You-
I'm okay with Ohio State's rankings and where they have us.
Yeah.
But not
We're
Cincinnati.
fine.
That
Huh?
sucks for Cincinnati.
It does, but it actually makes sense. And they're going to get jumped again.
It doesn't make
No,
sense.
it does.
They smoked Notre Dame.
They beat one team that was in the top 20.
But that's Notre Dame.
And then-
Every year, Notre Dame.
They're bad. Good one get year week.
They never
bad
play
one next.
anybody, but
The problem is they also played Navy, who was 2-5 and almost got beat. The last 2 weeks. in a
everybody
row-
almost loses to the Navy.
Not like
Every
they did.
year.
It came down to the wire. They lost the last 2 weeks. They barely beat really bad teams, and they said that. I watched the interview with the guy from it. That came into the play.
It's true. The Marines were playing Houston last Sunday.
You don't talk.
Oh, okay.
Because you don't know what you're talking about. But I actually
my
heard that the
gosh.
other two teams that they put 8 and 9 are going to jump them. So Oklahoma, who is undefeated,
The worst
and
Wake Forest.
who's undefeated, all have more difficult games.
We got time
it's
left.
Unfortunately, it's not Cincinnati's. Oh yeah, we. But I'm just glad
Luke
Ohio
Fickell's
State was
last
number 5
year
and
in
we
Cincinnati. He's moving to Penn State because James Franklin's going to take the USC job.
Is this what's going to happen?
I mean,
Is this a shuffle?
That's what I think is going to happen. But anyway, this is not a sports podcast as
Whoa.
much as I would love
I
for
would
it
love
to
it.
be.
Same.
You.
But we are talking about the recent events surrounding the name change behind Facebook. Not
Facebook.
the app. They're not changing the name of the app. But if anybody saw the super weird announcement videos of Mark Zuckerberg, who's the most normal person I've ever seen.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of just like an everyday average Joe.
I'm not a lizard.
I want to play that.
what he
I
said
didn't
the
get to
other
show
day.
you.
You
There's
told me
this
the-
TikTok out there
Yeah, this
where my brother told me about it, and I watch it every morning just to laugh a little bit. But he used the Sweet Baby Rays, and he just says, like he's trying to be a normal person, just put the Sweet Baby Rays on it. Sweet Baby Rays, Sweet Baby Rays.
Oh my gosh.
And in his defense, his personality has not changed. I watched his original interview yesterday, I think from 2004, when it was called The Facebook, of him on CNN, and he has not changed.
No, he's the same person.
Maybe you just have to be like that in order to do what he does.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Elon Musk is pretty cool. But Facebook changes their name to Meta, okay,
Yep.
because they're shifting the priority of their company.
It's actually the parent company that owns
Right.
Facebook, Instagram,
because Facebook
what's
does
up,
a lot.
up?
WhatsApp.
Yeah, WhatsApp. Yeah.
Facebook does a lot more than the
yeah.
app Facebook now. They're into so many things.
It's actually called Meta Platforms, and then they're considering all of them under the umbrella, these new Meta Platforms.
So Russ, do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you scared by it? What's going on?
My first reaction was I found out about it by seeing the meme from The Office where Andy is like, "Call me Drew," and Jim's like, "I'm not going to call you that." and people, I think my more question is, I'm curious if you guys think, did they change the name because they're wanting to create something new, or I saw something. MSNBC did this whole thing on. They're like, this is just another example of a company that's in hot water trying to change their name to get rid of their. They brought up the whole thing of like how JetBlue back in the day had all the air traffic catastrophe, so they changed their name to AirTram so they wouldn't be sued.
Yeah.
Johnson & Johnson about 10 years ago had like something where they're causing cancer with something, so they just took one of their products, put it under another name. To me, it seems like for them to roll out something of this magnitude, they've had to been planning it for a while.
You're talking about they have signage that's already changed it up.
Yeah.
A branding.
So is it just good
project like
timing for
this,
them that they had already been planning on?
Good bet. Yes, I think so. There's no way possible because I watched the CBS evening. I don't forget what show it was on CBS. I think it was Dateline. I don't know. The report where they were interviewing the Facebook whistleblower, as they call her, the lady that was working at Facebook, and then she resigned, and she has over 1,000 pieces of information, pictures of documents, things that she's gotten that really shows that Facebook knew about Instagram, and they had studies and everything that showed that it was actually a very negative impact, not total, but in general, especially for teenage girls.
You mentioned Instagram. So what are all the companies they own? Facebook.
I don't know. You have to look up. Well, they own Oculus. They own, like I said, Instagram, WhatsApp. I don't know. You can pull it up. They own quite a few.
Yeah.
But I just think it's interesting timing. I think there is no way. We went through a little bit of a rebrand, and we are nothing like Facebook. I can't imagine. They have locations all over the world. In fact, their primary one, I think, is in Ireland. I think that, interestingly enough, the reason why they have these all over the world is because they get out of paying taxes in certain places based on it. So they have Facebook headquarters in they got one in California, they got in Ireland, they got something, I think, in Australia, they got over in the Middle East. They have locations everywhere, and I think there's something about international rules about income and something. So I think they probably get out of a lot of taxes based on that. But
This is crazy. All the companies Facebook owns.
I'm
Let's hear
sure
it,
it's
let's
I
hear it.
encourage people to look it up, but it's like I can't even.
dozens. We don't have time to go through them all.
Dozens.
What are some of the
There's
major
probably
ones?
Over 20.
Well, they buy up competition. They buy up technology. Well, one of the things we'll talk about, the Oculus and other things like that, they buy up technology for things they want to create. So they just go and buy that company.
They buy
their technology.
Like they bought a biometric ID verification platform. They bought a natural language processing technology. They bought conversion AI. They bought interactive video technology. They bought.
That's all for the metaverse.
Enhanced employee communication app. I mean, it's just really.
That's what you do if you're that big. They have 60,000+ employees.
But they've been acquiring companies since 2007. They acquired their first company.
Wow.
It's just
Go look at you know what else is fascinating? I was looking at Facebook just because it's been in the news, and looking at their growth and profit was fascinating. I didn't realize they only made.
How threatened do you think they feel from Parler?
Probably not much, but
there is a lot of competition coming out on YouTube, though. YouTube's getting a lot of because they're demonetizing all these people who talk about all sorts of things.
Yep.
But really, it's called Rumble. Rumble's one of them.
Rumble, I've heard of Rumble.
And there's one more that I'm not sure what I know the name of. But yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see if you see these new platforms come to light. But anyway, so the metaverse. Let's talk about the metaverse because I think that's an interesting conversation. I think that there's definitely all that stuff going on with the whistleblower. But at the same time, I don't know if anybody's really surprised by any of that, right? I mean,
No.
And at the same time, doesn't Facebook have all these, because of that one provision, they have like protection from any sort of.
I think they have protection against something that happens because of their platform, like everything that happened with the Capitol
January
riots and
6th,
all
yeah.
that. I think they have. I think that's a basic rule. But right now, I mean, that's what this lady that was a former employee, she just testified before a Senate subcommittee because they're actually looking at redoing internet rules. So I guess that's something they created years and years ago but haven't touched, which is what are the rules that we think we need. And I think it's kind of clear that they have, again, I know it's privately owned, but they have a beast of something they've created. I don't know. I mean, we can look up. I don't know how many users are on it now. It's probably around 2 billion.
Well, that's just the app, yeah.
But I mean, just Facebook alone. But I mean, they've created something that's become a global market. And so I think whenever you have something like that, that's kind of typically when government gets involved and you see the.
But
the
it shifted
dangers
from
of it.
becoming a place where we connect with people to a place where the app learns us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The
And that's
algorithm.
the shift.
It's
Is
no
that
longer neutral.
all of a sudden they have acquired probably the most valuable thing that any entity can ever acquire, and that's
Yeah.
the data behind our behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we've all experienced the whole thing.
And that's proven by how much money they make. 'Cause
Right.
They sell marketing.
And we've all, experienced the whole deal of, I was just talking about buying golf clubs, and but I want cheap
Shows
golf
up as an
clubs, and
Instagram
so
ad.
I got an Instagram ad the second later for cheap golf clubs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've all experienced that, where I looked at a chair and thought, I want that chair in my head, and somehow it knew that I
Yeah,
thought that
yeah.
thought. But
They're listening and watching and
how many? I've heard it said before that we've become the product.
Yeah.
yes.
Right, that Facebook, the app or the entity, is not the product, but we've become the product, and I think it's fascinating. But I think we should talk about the metaverse a little bit because you are really excited about it.
I am
Tim.
not excited about the I think it's fascinating.
But for
I
the
think it's
people who don't
dangerous.
know what the metaverse is, can you give
Well,
your IT
No, it's not an IT
gifting
thing.
to make as a
I
pastor, like
can't.
complicated things relatable?
It's
How
not.
many Unix did it take to make it? Because you've been saying that a lot
Right.
lately.
Is this what they were talking about in Revelations?
Yeah. Unix is a programming language. A Unix is something else.
What I love is
But
that he
Saint
assumes
Nick.
people know that, and so
Okay.
lately he's been being
All
like,
right.
"Yeah, there were 3 Unix here the other day," and they
I
were
did
just
not say that. So, anyways, he's referring to
Have you
something.
ever met
that was
one in
said.
person?
Huh?
Have you ever met one in person?
A Unix programmer?
Oh.
Or a Unix?
Anyway, metaverse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So metaverse is just is basically a virtual universe. That's all it is. It's a virtual world, a virtual universe. It's something that has been in the works for quite
Did you
a
watch
while.
it
Watch what?
when he was explaiing it.
The announcement.
Oh,
And he
yeah,
actually
that's what I
showed
saw
it.
some- yes. I mean, it's pretty crazy
Yeah.
what they're actually trying to build out for it. If you want to just some idea of, I think, where, like visually, where you could get this from, the movie Ready Player One, which was a book, and I think they actually, I think Trey was telling me it's actually they have 2. There's Ready Player One, and I think there's Ready Player Two. There's a second book already, but I think this idea is just a virtual world. It's getting lost in a virtual world. It's a world that doesn't really exist, but it absolutely exists.
Yeah.
It's a world that's not real, but it's 100% real to everybody who's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been making movies on this stuff for years. Movies where we've seen people that don't even leave their house. They sit in something and put something on, and they actually have physical sensation. And their little robot, iRobot, their whatever is out, kind of being them in the world, so that they don't get viruses. And it's like a sterile society. And there's no crime. And it's like. It's pretty crazy, and it's the idea of of a virtual world. Think about, I really think, and this is what is crazy to me, because I grew up as a kid playing video games, and video games were pretty, I guess you kind of, I don't know, pedestrian when I
Primal.
was a kid. I mean, you're playing, from Atari to Nintendo and to Sega Genesis, and go through that iteration, and
Sega
from Pong
Genesis.
and that to Sonic the Hedgehog, right? And playing little games like that. And then I've watched in my lifetime video games go from being like an activity where you killed brain cells but had fun doing it, to actually becoming a massive media and business market where people are making tons of money on these things, to then moving beyond that from just money to becoming like creating the future. Like people are creating the future in these kind of virtual worlds. And so a lot of the gaming stuff I think is actually has actually becoming integrated with, now you have people like Mark Zuckerberg, who I whether you like him, don't like him, think he's weird, definitely a visionary of taking this kind of stuff to the next level, investing billions and billions of dollars into it. And where it goes, I mean, a lot of people are saying they think this is the next iteration of the internet. What I envision that I think is, okay, so this is that it could be fun in that world. Like you can literally, I mean, everybody loves the idea of make-believe, because in a make-believe world, you can do anything, you can be anything. There's no accountability, there's no responsibility. You can go into a video game world and you can shoot people and kill them, and you don't have to worry about it because you didn't do it in real life. What I think is interesting is that we have spent so much time as a culture and a society in a virtual world already. What I mean by that is the amount of time that's spent in gaming, but now you don't, because I remember when this shifted, you know, when I first grew up, you played video games by yourself. And then it changed to you play video games with other people. And so now you're online, you're talking to people, everything has become, it's less surreal and it starts to become more real. There's people on the other end in your ear, you're talking on a microphone, so you're actually doing this community virtual stuff together. You take that and then you add social media, which is a virtual world in itself, where people feel like they have friends and they have connections, even though they've never seen them, they've never met them before, but like, oh yeah, there's my friend, you know, Bill, and you know, you DM each other or whatever. You take all of that, and I guess the biggest thing I see is where is the line between virtual and real end and begin?
It's interesting, which I think our listeners should know. I think that you are kind of a skilled Call of Duty player. Is that right?
No,
just be honest.
Not super
Don't
skilled.
be bashful.
No, I played it
Don't
a
be
long
bashful.
time ago, but it was really Counter-Strike was the thing when I was a kid. I was kind of early, probably late teens.
You still play a
early
lot
20s.
of Tetris?
No,
Listen,
I haven't played a video game in a long
Duck
time,
Hunt.
bro. I haven't.
listen. That's not what I've heard from your son-in-law.
No, I haven't played them in probably a year and a half, 2 years.
It's pretty recent. Listen,
That's pretty recent.
I think it's interesting. Where I push back and I go, I don't know if it's going to be super intense at first, is because I feel like the pandemic's pushed us into a place where we've accepted a lot of technology a lot sooner, as far as like the timetable for things like virtual workplaces and working from home. And I think it could go one of two ways. You go, both of these are probably wrong scenarios, but you think we've gone into it so quick and so aggressively that culture will begin to reject it because we realize, oh, actually, I don't like working from home, or either that, or people do like it, and they do like the flexibility things like that offer. And so things like putting on your Facebook glasses to go to work every day to see your virtual, your Meta glasses, to see your virtual coworkers might be intriguing. But I like all of the utility that they're trying to create. So the education, things like that, the education goals they have as far as making things more accessible. Like, I absolutely think it'd be better to sit in a college class with your Facebook glasses on than a lot of them to be there. A lot of my college classes, I feel like it'd be a lot better. I don't know. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's a whole new dimension and world.
Literally.
It really is.
What did you think the internet was going to do when the internet came out?
Oh my! I never could have imagined. I thought it was mostly an information holding place. When it first went there, it was like, oh, you can get information on this. When it did, and then began to see that it opened the door for when they opened the door for anybody to be able to create a website and put something up. I remember creating my first website. This was back in probably the mid '90s, and it was just fascinating that you could create something as visual as you wanted to, and put anything out there. And then it's become just in the last 20 years, something I would have never imagined.
Mm-hmm.
I really just thought it was the interconnected that, hey, you have a way to get information to all this, to now it's like, it's just a different world.
It's a
way
whole
beyond,
different world.
It's way beyond anything any of us could imagine. I think social media is the other end of that. Like that, we got connected. Once
But
we
which
got
is why
connected,
things
where
like
do we go?
this are so monumental and momentous. I mean, these are huge moments in society because I think about no one reads a physical paper anymore, or
Right.
very like, it's
Yeah.
shut down a certain
Yep.
industry. The internet did. There are things that just don't exist anymore, and so the questions I'm asking are, wow, what isn't
Can you
going to
imagine-
exist now that we
Can you
have
imagine what the pandemic would have been like if we
have a
didn't have the internet?
metaverse? Right.
I mean, you go back 100 years to the Spanish flu, but we have no idea what that was like. But could you imagine if there was like lockdown and you're hearing reports off of TV or radio?
Well, I
but
bet
there's
you
no
wouldn't have stayed at home.
Huh?
If there was no internet. I bet you there would be no stay-at-home orders.
Oh, who knows? That's a different. I don't know. Because
There'd
they
be
had
nothing to do at home.
They had stay-at-home orders back. 100 years ago. I mean, it was the normal practice when there was an outbreak. I mean, that for years and years. That's nothing.
That is true.
new.
Martin Luther, he said he stayed at home during the was it the Black Plague.
Yeah, probably. I don't know which one it was, but I mean, I'm just saying that is the normal protocol. What they did was the normal protocol. For hundreds of years, whenever there was a plague, whenever there was something, it was, and there was the 14 days or this, there was a certain amount of time that you were supposed to go and shelter in place. So that is not like a new thing. I think we would have probably still done that. I just imagine what it was like. We would have lost a sense of connectedness that we did have because of technology. Zoom and all those other things, and we all continue to meet. The church, we continue to put out content. We continue to have, hey, let's connect online on Sunday, and we're in chat windows, and we're watching something that we recorded. You know what I mean? Like, it definitely made life, I guarantee, a lot better than it could have been.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So what we're talking about, the internet, metaverse, all this stuff, social media, what I think we need to recognize is all of it is a double-edged sword.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I kept thinking is this whole new world is just like any other technological leap. The advantages and the disadvantages are both going to become more extreme. It was eerie for me, too. Like, I don't read a lot of fiction, but for some reason, the last couple of fiction books I've read, one of Trey's suggestions was Ender's Game, this early, it's like American classic sci-fi I read last summer. And then when I was in Boston, I read Ted Decker's new book. He's a Christian fiction writer called Play Dead, and it's about these teenagers that get lost in a submersive virtual reality in a VR world and so as I was watching Zuckerberg explain and walk us through all that, it was very eerie.
Yeah.
Because I did kind of like you. I thought, okay, how far are we? This is a huge leap towards that world of being submerged in a world in which we could get lost. And so I couldn't help but it is fascinating. But then, like you mentioned in passing, the parts of those that are working hybrid or working remote, you know, how much Google has spent in creating more enjoyable and more adaptive work environments, whether it's hybrid or remote. And when I saw how you could throw something on a screen and you could, you know, from the comfort of your own home, come in there and you're all in this office that you've designed. I'm like, the possibilities are limitless. And I mean, I thought about, you know, like me and my family that live in different states, like the idea that we could bring our favorite music, our favorite items, all of the things from the external
You guys
world
could have
into
dinner
this
together.
virtual world and actually like see those. So again, it's like, okay, it's impossible to predict, but there's how deep are the advantages and disadvantages going to be? But it is fascinating.
It is fascinating. I think one of the hopes that I have for humanity is that something that is created or any sort of momentum towards something that that takes us away from what we know to be good. So, for example, I come from the era in my childhood, it wouldn't be odd for me to play video games for 6, 7, 8 hours at a time. Okay, well, you feel like garbage when you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, the people who a couple years ago were addicted to Pokemon Go, and they're always on their phone playing Pokemon Go. I mean, they'd be driving down the road.
Is that the one where you try to find the little things?
Right. It's like a virtual world.
Geotagging
It's like a
or something?
metaverse, okay? But that there are negative implications to the technological advancement, negative physical implications to the technological advancements that we make. And so I think that there is something to be said. Like if you were to ask people probably from more your guys' generation that remember pre-internet more than I do, there are some things like if we would have known what that would have done to us, it was definitely better that way.
Yeah.
You know, the pace of life, the lack.
We were dumb and happy. We didn't need it.
Right.
Yeah. The two things
We didn't need it.
The
you
two
know?
things I thought as I was watching on the negative extremes is what is the new? How much is this going to raise the addiction factor?
Oh yeah.
And how much is this going to raise social isolation and people that don't know how to actually engage and be present?
I mean, is this going to become, rather than something that's fun to engage in, it's going to be an escape world?
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
where people are escaping relationships, they're escaping responsibilities, they're escaping that because, man, I go in this world, and oh, by the way, there might not be any, there's no, there's no accountability in a virtual world, at least to begin with. Just the same way there's no accountability with the internet, and they're now working on,
Yeah.
we need this. I promise you, that's where they'll go. It'll be a virtual world, so you can go and do and say anything you want. But then when they realize all these people are on here and that it's actually affecting people psychologically, it's affecting people emotionally, it's affecting people physically, then someone's going to go, wait a minute, we need to put some rules. I mean, that's basically been the story of social media. It's been the story of all of them. That's why we're having these questions
And
about
what
Facebook
and what can
Instagram.
you do? What can and can't you do in these virtual worlds? Like maybe it's dark. I even think like what will constitute as crimes? Like what will constitute in a predatory world, in a world with
Well, there are things that are constituted as crimes on the internet now.
Sure.
That in a way are virtual, but they're not.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that it's going to be the merging of the two.
But then in the
the
positive
virtual.
way, what kind of worship experiences could a church have with the underground church in China? I mean, so again, it's like there's both of these extreme. I know it's extreme, but like
I don't know. Yeah, I've got concerns just because I think we've seen and we've lived in a world where people stay home and they watch an experience.
Yep.
You engage with it to an extent.
But even that, you'd say it's not as
It's not
as engaging.
It's
It's
not as
the same.
engaging. It's not
No.
the same. But you also, when it comes to the church, we'll just to mention that one. One of the things we all recognize just being around it is the church is not an experience.
Yeah.
The church is not a service.
yeah.
There's far more to it. It's the engagement. It's the connection of community. It's the coming together. It's there is something that is. I'm grateful that we have the online stuff and we have a way for people to connect. But it's got to go to a sense of community. It's
Yeah.
got to go to a sense of
Well, there's even a
of that.
backlash now. A lot of just over the last 2 months, like a lot of the larger churches are starting to either do away with online or, like Mosaic, they will only record their online, the person speaking directly to the camera and show, but they will actually refuse to show the live experiences.
It's a different experience.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's a different experience, so you have to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole idea of there is in the physical world, in the real, tangible world, there is implications to the technological advancements that we make.
Right.
And so, like I said, I think that there can be great utility with all this stuff
Yeah.
if it's done right. But you just wonder, like, one is like right now you see our government's having trouble keeping up with the change of
Yeah.
information and the change of, the famous senator or Senate summon committee, talking to Mark Zuckerberg, and you got Orrin Hatch, who's 87 years old from Utah, who's been in the Senate for 150 years, and he said, "So what exactly can you do with this internet?" And it was like a
Well,
meme,
you
like
can
the
do
whole thing.
email.
Oh yeah, he was
Yeah.
explaining
And
the
yeah,
internet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's not how it works. But you have the bodies, the regulatory bodies, right,
Yeah.
who make sure things are safe and make sure they're supposed to keep things in line that they just can't keep up. And so it'll be fascinating. Technology is just changing so much quicker than all of the current structures that we have in place.
Yeah.
I think the psychological impact of it is always lagged behind with everything, with the internet. Like I think this is kind of the way it always goes. New technology comes, there's an excitement because new technology brings new ideas. It brings new way of doing things, new convenience to our lives. So, like, I remember when smartphones came out. Wait a minute, you mean I could get my email right here all the time, not just when I get home and get on the computer?
Did you have a BlackBerry?
Yeah. I had a BlackBerry.
And
I had a flip phone.
my mom's BlackBerry.
And,
She's always on it.
but I mean, so when
That was before me.
smartphones, so whenever new technology comes out, there's an excitement because of what it gives you, what it brings, and so there typically is, probably generationally, there's a group of people that quickly embrace it. There are some that quickly reject it, and then it takes time. And those who quickly reject it tend to come along. Those who quickly embrace it, they go all in. I mean, it's just the way it's gone. So we see the pros of technology and new advancements usually on the front end. It's after we've had it for a while that the negative effects begin to show up. It's a lag measure. And for example, with the whole evidence of the stuff coming out about Instagram and that it can cause detrimental harm to especially the young girls. That was kind of what came out of it because of the way they see their bodies, the way they do this. It's, we see the rise of all this stuff that's going on with them and their body image and all this other good stuff. Like, no one's thinking about that when you're creating a platform going, because you imagine Instagram when we could just post, anybody could get on there and they could just share, and we'd be able to share images with each other and how connected families could be from across the country. It all sounds great. We don't ever see the negative impacts until after. And so I think, but I think we're getting a little wise to it. We've been through enough technology that I think there are a lot of people that are looking at something like the metaverse and they're going, wait a minute, what, so now people aren't going to know the difference between what is real and what's not. People, like you said, your generation it'd be nothing to spend 6 or 7 hours a day online playing a video game. Well, if you're starting to spend almost half of your waking hours in a virtual world, at some point, what's going to be real?
Well,
because you step out of that and your real world isn't great because you spend all your time in your virtual real world.
So in college, we were playing Grand Theft Auto 5. Okay, which is a horrible, morally horrible game. But it's, but it would be on all the time. I'm talking I had 4 roommates and we would take turns playing it. So when one of us was in class, and it was so engaging that it was just we all played it all the time. When we weren't playing it, we were watching the person playing it, and we would just it would always be on. So we'd beat this game, right? And we'd play it for so long that and it was so realistic that we got to the point where, you walk outside and you feel like you can break into this car because you're just,
That's scary.
It is.
It's kind of like when you leave a movie that's been going on for a while that's been really realistic.
Oh,
and you get in the car and you're always, what was that, a gunshot?
Yeah,
That came my way?
exactly. You start driving.
I can drive like that. I can feel that.
Every time I leave a movie, that's exactly how
So
I
that's a
feel.
great question. Does it carry over to the real world?
But yeah,
how dangerous?
I think that's an interesting phenomenon, but even more so, one of the things that's made me really, made me really consider whether or not humanity can handle more technology, and it's actually given me hope, is the way that people have run to TikTok as a new platform. And I'll tell you why. Because some people might be like, oh, it's just more social media. But it's a whole different type of thing, to where people really are their authentic selves on this app. And it's really funny. It's really, I'm sure there's some bad stuff on there, but for the most part, I love that thing. It's so funny. And people are so funny. People are so authentic. It's like a quicker YouTube now. Like, I go there to learn things. So if I want to frame my basement, I'll go to TikTok and get a 3-minute video, which is like a condensed 20-minute YouTube video on how to frame a basement. There's 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 70. So it's helpful. It's funny. People are authentic, and it just doesn't. I'm sure there's negative stuff. It just doesn't seem to be that negative for the most part, or at least we've displayed the ability, right, to almost create at least a portion of an app that seems almost to enhance at least my life. But you guys need to get TikTok if you don't have one. I love that crap.
I have it, but don't use it.
I don't have one.
Oh, it's so great.
I refuse just because my daughters had it, and they would send me cat videos or whatever.
I know.
And you'd watch it, and then it would immediately start scrolling to another one, and you'd see 7 seconds of another one going, oh, I want to see that. And then another one, and I realized real fast, I was like,
It does
I
seem the
spend
one
too much
danger of
time.
it.
I will get lost forever. I will waste too much time. It's not because I don't want to. am refusing to get it because I'm afraid I will waste too much time on it.
It does seem like with every new social media platform, it reduces humanity's attention span even more.
Yes, but they have two things to address your thing. This is early on, I was more that way, then it's less so. But TikTok has videos on there that they post and say, you've been scrolling for a while. Why don't you stop and go do something else?
Well, that's nice.
Which is very good. But I do feel shamed that that's come up with me on TikTok. And also,
That's embarrassing.
yeah. What did you just mention?
He mentioned
Attention span.
Oh yeah. But the most popular podcast that exists is 3 hours long every
Joe Rogan?
episode. Yeah. So I mean, yes and no. So,
But I think.
But as far as
I think
focus.
I think people do podcasts.
I'm
and
focused
they
that whole
listen to
podcast.
'em. I think they listen to them more than they watch them, and they put them on while they're working out, doing something else. And
Well, to shift it a little bit, one thing that's, like you mentioned this yesterday, I mean, one thing that's maybe worth mentioning is, aside from the technological potential threats of the metaverse, is it is inspirational
Yeah.
that a guy, after this much time, can be so bold to say, hey, I'm going to change the entire direction. I'm going to change the entire name, and I'm going to create, we mentioned it a lot on this podcast, but one of the guys that we listen to, or one of the podcasts is about already, and Erm McManus, and one of the things he always says that I really resonate with is that, when he's done TED Talks, he's looked at, okay, every species creates something, and his argument is that, bees create honey and spiders create webs, and that humanity is the only species that actually creates the future. It's the only species that actually imagines a future and then creates it. And I do think what Mark Zuckerberg is doing, whether it's the kind of future we need or not, is a really beautiful, inspiring picture of that. And so I think, it at least causes me to ask the question, like, okay, what if he can do that, like,
Well, I do-
what kind of good future
Yeah,
do I want
love
to create?
the-
What kind of
I love the forward looking spirit of what they're doing. Like, to be the most successful social media conglomerate, because it's not just one platform, in the world with more users than anybody else, and to go, hey, we're going to change our name, or at least the name that they're changing their stock ticker as of December 1st. I mean, so they're and changing, rebranding. We talked about it. That not only is it expensive, it's all this stuff, but he's trying to. I don't think he's doing it to get out of hot water, because I do think they must have started on this years ago. Branding takes a long time. That'd be my guess, but I think it is. He's trying to put out there, this is where we're headed. And that's why I think he's kind of pushing the name and everything, is because I think he's dropping the vision of this is where it is. Plus, he's probably getting other, I mean, there are other companies. I think I heard Elon Musk possibly invested $1 billion into a form of or a portion of the metaverse and some of the technology with it. And so I applaud someone
Pocket
like that.
change.
That's
to Elon Musk.
That's a lot of
the richest man in the world.
I know but that's a lot of. I don't know. I just think most people would tell you you're successful. Don't change anything. And I'm impressed by people that go, yeah, we've been successful, but for the future that I see, we have to change things.
Yeah.
And so I kind of admire it. Like you said, though, I'm not sure if it's a world we want.
You know what's interesting? I joke about that Liver King guy that I follow that I sent.
I've been taking his stuff.
Yeah.
You've been looking at his stuff?
No, I haven't, but you talked
I
about
bought
it
his
on air.
supplements.
Oh, me too. I take him every day.
I
Oh,
hate
but
liver.
he is, I mean, his whole idea is he's a fitness guy, and he's created these like primal tenets, okay? These 9 primal tenets. And his whole idea is that reconnecting with the way that the, early humans more so lived, and connecting with the earth and bonding with people that are close to you and getting sun and all these things that, and putting your phone down. And so I found it as kind of a nice yang to the yin of all the digital that we're involved in every day, whether it's phones or TVs or I'm not kidding, thinking I want to walk outside barefoot every morning, even if it's for like a couple seconds. Because how often
30
do
degrees.
you have shoes on all day, every day. You never leave the confines of a building, especially when it gets cold, and it's just you move from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing
So
to thing.
you go out in the morning barefoot
Yes.
for a few seconds, then you come in and get on TikTok for 3 hours.
Exactly.
But you
Then
got
I have to go back outside.
At least you got them both in your.
But the whole idea of and he's extreme. I mean, he does these like simulated failed hunts. It is. We follow him. He's Liver
Entire
King.
tree branches.
Yeah,
in the middle
it's
of a
great.
field doing squats.
He's
and,
great.
Oh,
Yeah,
my.
it's awesome. Eats raw liver and raw
I can't
bovine
I
testicle
can't
and
do-
all sorts of
I can't
things.
do
For
liver.
it's just, ugh.
Yeah,
It's
that's
gross.
that's one of those things I can't do.
Well, then
But-
his supplements would be perfect for you.
Right.
Yeah.
He does. They're in a pill form.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's one of those things like, is the technology better, or is that better? Is the future that is being created better, or is the past better?
That's a great question. We were having this kind of in a real religious context.
Yeah.
Okay, so excuse this if you're not a religious person, but we were having this conversation yesterday, and he was like, "Well, when I read my Bible, I want to read the actual paper Bible. So I have a plan, and I do this." And I said, "I read it on YouVersion." But I have a streak going, so I got to keep my streak going. But I think it's kind of like, again, it's technology, and it's asking that question: is the new technology really better? I think it's a great question.
Or is it
I don't-
or is it a good balance? I mean, because I feel like a lot of times, even with health stuff, like we've had this conversation, but like when you look at the way the East tends to approach healthcare and intrinsic health, and the way the West tends to approach it, which is almost primarily man-made pharmaceuticals and medicines and treating the symptoms, whereas the East would tend to be way more holistic, and a lot of things that can't be measured under a microscope, chi and meridian energy levels, and more diet and more types of yoga.
Pollution, overpopulation, and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got its.
Right.
It's got
Don't
its,
have access to healthcare.
yeah, it's got its
Right.
bad parts to it, but traditionally most of them.
Communism. I mean,
I'm talking about their health care, and
well, I
then,
mean, that affects the health.
and most of the islands and the people in those islands do tend to live way longer, but it's probably both and. I mean, I
Why
would
would
say
you
I would
worry
say
about living
Liver King would be a
cryogenics?
version of
Freeze myself.
what they do. It's way more holistic, way more. But if I'm having to get my arm amputated, then give me some medicine. I think it's both and. I think it's.
Okay, so last question then with this. Let's just do this. Last question. Go around. What do you, if you're imagining what the future is going to be, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, technology advancements, kind of like the whole Back to the Future movies where, what was it, 2020 or whenever it was. What was the date? Remember the date?
1985 or
Was it-
something?
well, that was the original date, but remember in the second one, there was a date which we passed a couple years ago that they went to the future and everybody's in
Right.
flying cars and flying hoverboards, and then that date came and we were like, no, it hasn't happened. So what do you envision? What are some things that you think, I think this is what we're going to see?
And how
Something's
long?
going to be created, something that like this, I just think this is the world that we're going to have.
What do I think that we're gonna see?
I'll give
You
a
go
couple
first,
and
yeah.
give you time to think, because I've thought about this a little bit. I've thought about different things.
This is why you asked the question. So you
No,
can
I
answer.
thought about it. I think with the metaverse, I think the big tie-in is going to be with social media. I think social media is very 2D. You scroll through on a flat screen. You DM. You connect with people on kind of a loose way. I think that it's going to become 3D and virtual. So Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Just imagine when you're engaged with your friends or your followers, but you're actually seeing them in 3D. So I think it's going to be another version of community, social media community, but I think it's going to feel a little bit more real than what it has. That's just a guess of what we're going to see in regards to the metaverse and social media. That's one. I've got some other ones, but I'll let you go.
I think some good things. I think 10 years from now, 10 to 20
10.
years from now, almost, I feel like a good portion of everything will be sustainable energy. So I think that's going to be a good advancement. I think
like clean coal.
clean coal.
That's sustainable.
Friends of coal. I think
How about you?
I think AI. I have so many
It's
thoughts,
hard.
but I don't.
It's a hard one just to kind of.
No, I know.
off the top of your head. So
Immediately,
maybe
I go
just
two
around.
places. I go to education. I think education is going to be completely
I
different.
mean, AI.
I think completely different college experience. I think the traditional university experience is going to implode, actually, because we are in a world where you can legitimately learn more on YouTube than you can in paying $60,000 a year for a traditional college experience. And so now I don't think that. I think the pandemic's put a lot of.
What about the people that say college is as much about the experience as it is what you learn?
That's fine, but the numbers don't flesh that out. College enrollment is going down
It is going
across
down.
the country.
Well, I agree. It's going
And
down.
so I think that means something. And I
like
and
that.
I would say there's a whole generation moving forward that would say, actually, I made a whole bunch of mistakes in college and shouldn't have had the freedom that I made. And
No, I agree.
And I
I just hear this from other parents as I've got one who graduated college and one who's going to college. One of the things I hear from some of the parents, just of kids about the same age and all that, is I just want my kids to have the college experience. And I've always told my kids I'm not paying for a college experience.
but that's definitely
So-
like a boomer Gen X parent mentality.
Yes, I agree.
That it
That'll
is.
probably go away.
I think it's
It'll
going
go away.
away because
It
my
will.
generation. I don't know if there's anybody who's like, yeah, that was a really valuable experience for me.
no,
I think
it'll
it's like
go away.
more
I
so that there's a lot of mistakes people made. There's a lot of things I'm ashamed of. There's a lot of.
Yeah.
I wish I could have not done
Addictions that they picked up.
it. Exactly.
Think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And debt
And debt.
that I'm
That's
living
for
with,
sure.
and I can't buy a house because I got to make an entire.
And Joe
mortgage
Biden
payment.
hasn't forgiven it yet.
Oh,
Forgiven it.
I'm sorry.
Dang it.
He may not. So that's a good one. You think
I think
education
education's gonna look
university level is
way
going to change?
different.
I'm down with that.
I think the gas station experience will be different too.
Yeah.
I think that with electric vehicles, it'll be a whole different experience. So I do think we'll have electric
By
vehicles.
the way-
here's why I think electric vehicles will become the thing, is because they're freaking fun to drive, and so they are
one.
awesome.
Yeah.
And
We've been talking about them for the
all
last few
of the
days.
advancement in the electric. It's not like something that's super woke and like it's something that's super, for Facebook metaverse. Like I even think electric cars are different because the
different experience
experience
is different.
is better,
Yeah.
and the technology in the cars is so much better. You got a crab walking Hummer and a 14-inch display thing on your thing that when you're parked, you can watch your YouTube on it, and it's like you've got. You can not have your hands on the steering wheel and it'll drive for you,
Yep.
and it'll go 0 to 60 in a second and a half. It's like these are things that make driving cars awesome. And so I think that in order for these things such as metaverse to become, maybe just to bring the conversation full circle, and we can wrap it up, but in order for these things to become more mainstream, I think whereas the whole burst of technology, like we're really in a revolutionary type of age, okay? Like the Industrial Revolution did one thing. Like there's a whole technological revolution with social media and
well, the internet,
internet,
social media,
into
virtual
social
world.
media, into virtual world. I think that was its own, technology into cars. I mean, there's all sorts of things that data, all these things. That's its own revolution. I think that's
I
going to
agree.
actually calm down because I think we have a certain awareness of, wait a second, I actually want this to enhance my life. Okay, so
Electric
that's my
guitar
hope
will.
for
Electric car will.
It is.
I'm
so
with
cool.
you. I was gonna say as well. I'm with you on the electric guitars. Electric cars.
I think those are gonna
electric
stay the
guitars are
same.
going to stay.
Yeah.
I think electric cars are going to be the future. There may be some other source of moving them at some point, but if they can figure out how to take some kind of, nuclear fusion and put it into something and control it over a long period of time, that'd be amazing. But I do think electric cars, and I was going to say, and we can talk about Elon Musk on another episode at some point, but I heard him on an interview alluding to that he believes Apple is working on an electric car.
Oh yeah, they've been working on it
And
for a long
because
time.
he was like, oh, why else would you hire 1,000 engineers?
But it's hard to produce cars. What Elon Musk
It
said.
is. He's even saying it's really hard. But but that's fascinating. If Apple gets into the electric car business, I'm not saying it'll be great, but I'm saying people will buy it because that's a cult.
I will say the thing that's happening
Just like Tesla.
sooner than, and the thing that's happening sooner that culture is becoming more and more comfortable with is self-driving cars.
That's what I was gonna add. I think we're 10 years away, maybe more. I don't know, but I think we're that for all cars being self-driven.
Well, that's what I meant by sustainable energy in 10 years. I think
Was
You meant
that
self-driving
self-driving
cars.
cars?
I'm talking about. Well, I'm talking about cars, electric cars.
Yes, I know, but I mean,
I meant that primarily in
what we'll
in
do
the area
with
of
it.
vehicles. Yeah.
I just think the
that's the number
self-driving,
one.
though, because even like my daughter got a new Nissan this year, and it's got its own version. They're working on it, ProPilot Assist, and you can literally drive down the freeway, and they want you to keep a hand on the wheel. You don't have to; it'll yell at you, but it turns as the road turns. But if you look at Tesla, they have full self-driving. You punch it in from your house address, stops at stop signs, stoplights.
It's got the valet mode where it'll go park your car and it'll come to you.
I think everybody's working on that technology. Every car manufacturer is doing it right now.
Yes. Let's save this for the next one.
Okay, we'll talk about stuff later.
And there's
It's
so
fascinating.
much stuff to talk about.
Oh,
like,
okay.
How
Well,
does
this is
the
good.
interior of cars change when you don't have to drive them anymore? Does it become more like an office? Do you have a desk? Do you have a TV?
Wow.
Anyway, that's all for this
Anyways.
episode of Metaverse, Facebook, and what else did we talk about? The Braves. So we're so glad that you stuck it all the way out to the end of this conversation. But as always, we would love it if you'd email us at podcast@thex.church.
What do you think? We want to know. What do you think is the future?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you
think
excited
about Metaverse? Are you
Yeah.
scared? Do you think it's the mark of the beast? We want to know that.
Have you stopped being monetized on YouTube? Like, what's going on with you? So just send us an email, like and share this podcast, this conversation. And we're so grateful for you. We'll see you for next time on the X Podcast.